Welcome, Reanimated fans, to this week's episode of Reanimated. I am AJ Conrad here with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Hi.
And as you may have guessed, the energy levels are, I don't know, turkey coma-ish, sort of post-Thanksgiving feasting. I don't know, all that good stuff. It was great. We feasted. But now we're back to talk about some of the final episodes of the last season of The Walking Dead, the OG. We're gonna do a double episode, or at least talk about two of the episodes today, so maybe a little bit longer. But these are episodes 22 and 23 of the season. So Faith and Family, and I think a lot to talk about here. But before we get into that, do you want to get into a couple of news items that we found? One of which I'm excited about it. I guess I don't know why you would remake it, but there is a French. Is it somehow associated with the filmmaker, Stuart? It
I
wasn't
don't
clear to me.
I don't know that it is. I think it's
Um,
just
but this is everybody probably remembers how much we really loved One Cut of the Dead, which you know was sort of, I don't want to say surprising how much we liked it, because I don't think that that's,
but there
you
was
know,
so much unexpected about
there
it.
was a lot of cool, unexpected things in it, and it was just a fun little project. But apparently there is a French remake of One Cut of the Dead, um, that has started filming. So that is, I guess they liked it too. But they're gonna come out with it. I had actually heard that there was some kind of project in mind, not necessarily a like repeat, but some kind of American project, but then I have not seen anything else about it. Um, and so
I mean, I guess they're trying to find this audience who hasn't seen One Cut of the Dead, but it's not a film that would benefit from a lot of rewatching. I guess it is the original because you can go back and look at how they were
yeah,
doing the first part, but a remake just feels like a really short-sighted sort of concept.
yeah, and so I'm not totally clear about why they're doing it, but they are. And it's going to be called Final Cut. And so
Oh, is that
there
what it's
we go.
gonna? Yeah, it's coupe is all I see on the French poster,
Yeah.
which I
Um,
assume just means cut.
cut. So I guess we'll see how this goes and see what they do with it. Though honestly, I don't know that you could really improve on the Japanese version of this.
Right, and clearly, what all they're trying to do is get whatever audience didn't see One Cut of the Dead, which I assume is actually pretty big because it had
Right.
barriers to entry, being a foreign film. Ooh,
Right.
subtitles.
So good though. It was so good. Well done. Still one of my favorites. So, you know. But anyway, we'll report on this as we learn more. And then you sent me this video game trailer of Callisto Protocol, and I've got to say, it looks so good. I like it's so
Well,
insane.
all right, all the grains of salt here, HA. What you watched was the live action trailer
I
starring
know.
Josh Duhamel of himself, which shows zero gameplay. So you
It does,
really,
but it reminds me, you know what it reminds me of is the Lost, what was it? What was the trailer that we were like all excited about? And this wasn't even that because this is like live action. But I mean, they make it look very, I mean, it's definitely got an Aliens vibe to it, right? At
it's
least that's
got
what
it's got a lot of vibes that I kind of like. This like crash spaceship, but then the survivor is looking around and he's like, "This doesn't look like a crash site. This looks like something else, right?"
Yeah.
Uh, and that's what I kind of liked about it. So it's got some weird like Pandorum vibes. Remember
Yeah.
that? Do you see that film?
Yeah.
Pandorum was such a good film. Like it gets like I look back in my head and I think that film was underrated. Uh, so yeah, it has those kinds of feels. Dead Space. I don't know. I didn't really play much of that, but there's definitely zombies in it, and there's also other things. And but who knows what the actual feel will be when you're in the game, as opposed to what this set and CG area where Josh Duhamel was running around and talking about his
Yeah.
feelings.
Yes. But we'll see. I raise a skeptical eyebrow when they do things like this because it usually means that there's just not a lot of heft behind it, but we shall see.
Yeah, it's the
I
fancy packaging on a
right.
bad Chianti. Maybe. Or maybe it's just the icing on the cake. But this comes out for next generation consoles next week, I believe, in December.
All right. Next up, there is this came out, I know this came out November 10th, but there's been a couple of follow-up articles that this particular one was out of Newsweek. And I mean, this is something I think we've been hearing about. I think there was a couple of stories about this last year, but as most people know, permafrost is unfrosting, and as it's unfrosting, i.e. melting, there are some very like old viruses that are starting to sort of come to light, which is disturbing to say the least, because and they do think that this may be the cause for the anthrax outbreak that happened in Siberia. Um, that killed off like a bunch of antelope and other stuff. And so I put this out there not to freak anybody out, but it's like I hope that we don't see more of this story. Honestly, I hope it stays where it is because I don't know that we want to see more viruses. I don't know. Was it the show Helix that was sort of the basis? Is that what it was?
They were definitely doing stuff in the Arctic. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what that it gave me kind of Helix vibes, and I wasn't excited to have those vibes reading a real life story.
Nope.
Um, but anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, the less said about it, the better. No news is good news on that front. Please stop reviving 50,000-year-old viruses. Thank you.
Right. Um, so on that happy note, we shall jump into our sort of review recap of Faith. And that's the episode 22. And this is, again, I have managed to avoid a lot of things. There's been a lot of like ads and hype and everything leading up to the end of this. So I have managed to escape and not see spoilers. Though it's been kind of difficult. So, but as we sort of like get to the end of this season, there's a lot to fit in and a lot going on.
This
And
episode is crazy with how much is going on.
this has, and I was going to say, this one is no exception. It is action packed. And we also brought back, there's a couple of characters we haven't seen in a really long time that make an appearance in this episode. And so we've got a few different groups in this. So we've got the
There's, I think, four different groups in
yeah.
this,
Yeah.
and
So
that's
we've
a
got
lot of stories. That's four
yep.
plots that are basically marching along together, and that's almost. I was kind of getting whiplash in this episode with all the cuts back and forth between the Aaron Jerry troop,
Yep.
the trial, the free Alexandrians who were out in the bush, like
Yep.
Carol and Gabriel and them,
And then the work camp.
and the work camp. Like there's so much going. Yeah, it was a ton. So but yeah, it begins with the work camp. Uh
Yeah, and we
and
have a bit of a voiceover too.
yes, there's the montage. Yeah, and I maybe it was supposed to be Judith the whole time.
I think so.
I could have sworn there were different kids talking in those montages. But we'll talk about Judith in the next episode. But yeah, so it's like we live facing death every day, and my dad wanted hope
Right.
to prevail over wrath. She's kind of re-invoking the end of the Savior War.
Yep.
Uh,
And there's a lot of
Ethos.
Negan in this, and there's a lot of things about that theme in this.
Mm.
And the work camp is kind of what we expected. Though they seem to be able to talk a little bit more freely than they have been. So we have some plotting going on with our little team in here. They're just like clearing tracks and doing things. I mean, that was one thing that wasn't entirely clear to me about what they were supposed to be doing, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Maybe this is the point, maybe they're just trying to break their spirits, but this seems like a lot of manpower to be putting out there. Like, are they trying to get this community ready for other people to live there? It's really, I don't know, were you puzzled by this too? It seemed
I
like they were
didn't spend a lot of time trying to ponder it, but I assume that they're just trying to clear those train tracks to connect up their outposts.
Maybe, but it just felt like a lot of labor and other sort of weird busy work they were doing, and so that felt a little odd to me. But in any case, we see what you would expect to see here, which is, our the themes that Ezekiel and Negan have been kind of talking out loud about, which is again the idea that Negan, even though he is semi-reformed, that other people don't forget in all of this, and this comes back full circle in the next episode too. um
Yeah, one of the things that they introduced at the beginning of this episode is Princess. Like one of her first lines is she looks over, she sees this guy, and she's like, "That's Tyler Davis." I'm like,
yeah,
wait, hold on. Who is that? This is one of the things about this episode, this season.
yeah.
22 episodes in, I clearly have no idea what happened anymore at the beginning of this season. I'm just
Well,
like,
to refresh
Tyler. I mean,
everybody.
I figured it out eventually because
Yeah.
this episode and the next one they kind of they talk about it, but this guy does not look familiar to me at all. I know he was
um
at the cocktail party, and I know him and Princess had a dust up in a rail car when they first got to
yeah,
Commonwealth.
yep.
But yeah, it's kind of a deep cut.
It is a deep cut, but I guess they have to have it be more than just the people that we know. It has to be more than just our
Yeah,
little troop of bandits. They have to have buy-in from other people to be able to pull this off. So I didn't think that that was a bad thing. I did think that that was a deep cut, and I think that it would have been just as effective to say have them ally with somebody else. But I guess in this case, they know a little bit about what he's about and why he ended up in that situation. So maybe that gives you
yeah.
a little bit more context about what's happening here and what drove him to that. So fine.
I think it might have
But
been a little more effective to have someone in parallel with them develop this
right.
like counterculture within the
Which is kind of what
Commonwealth.
I was thinking, like, somebody that had been there a little longer and could kind of act as this, okay, this is what's going on, this is how it is. But they did not choose to do that, so we have to work with what we got. And they're doing the normal things, they're doing reconnaissance, they're seeing how many guards there are. They're like, you know, not not sort of like they're not giving up. They're basically trying to figure out somehow a way to rally people and figure out a way out. Not understanding or not knowing. I mean, I'm sure they hope that other people are outside going to try to get them out, but they have to sort of rely on themselves. And just kind of discovering different information about what the guards are, and they do a good job at there's one pardon me, there's one guard in particular who shows, and we saw this with the other guard that died, like in the last episode, but
Yeah,
that
because
they are doing
they're not just like monolithic evil
right.
guards. They have families and stuff, and
They're not
they do
just
develop
stormtroopers. They're
197 pretty well later on.
Yeah, they're not just stormtroopers. They actually do have, there's a reason why they're doing this. And a lot of them have, families out there. And we saw this also obviously with the train conductor, the engineer that died or offed himself, rather than put his family at risk.
I thought
So
it was kind of weird in this episode how after making a huge deal about Annie's going to be taken off in another truck and oh, where's she going to
suddenly she's
go?
there.
She's just like 20 feet away from Negan working on the rail line too. And that was
Right.
just a weird like, why did they even have to, what was the story reason other than to get him beat up by the guards a few more times? Because he probably would have kept his head down if they hadn't been split up. But
Right.
like, what was, yeah, I don't understand why they would then just have her out there and they know she's pregnant, it turns out, and she's doing manual labor. It's just, these guys have gone from 0 to 60 in terms of
Right.
being evil, too.
Right. And again, it doesn't make sense from like a human capital point of view and even a motivational point of view. Like this doesn't, as I said, like the things that they are doing don't seem to be incredibly helpful or whatever they're trying to accomplish. So that feels weird. But you know, um, it, this is the little group we have, and I guess they're working in Alexandria, and you do have you have very good interactions between Negan and other people, but especially again with Ezekiel, and a little bit of a repeat but same theme of the conversation that they have, which is like Ezekiel is again saying he does not forget the things that Negan has done, and even says you don't even remember, and then brings up Henry's brother and the fact that Negan had him killed, and and they do enough to give you a little bit of a taste that maybe Negan's going to betray them again, and they definitely try to like lead you down that bread with those breadcrumbs, right? Like even to the end of this, you think maybe Negan's going to betray them, but that's not what
Well,
happens.
how many times? I mean, I guess it's the end of the show, so they can't
Right,
keep raising that flag. But
right.
there's enough
Um,
bad blood still between people and Negan that it still works.
Yeah, and it does
Yeah.
work. And there is, when people are in these kinds of situations, like what people will do for survival. And, honestly, I think that this was just a really great you know, example that Negan has changed, but that he also is fully he understands that this doesn't just because he is now in this position and has evolved to some degree, he understands that that does not make up for the things he has done, and that and there's like some really great moments, but the moments between him and Ezekiel are still very strong, um and also honestly the moments between him and the warden is like just you know
And then the
again.
warden is like a Negan light. He doesn't
Yes.
know who he's talking to.
Nope.
But also, he has all the leverage. So Negan, there's not much he can do.
Right.
But before we get to Negan and the warden, we also get introduced. Well, we're back out in the woods with Jerry and Aaron. This is part of this whiplash because this happens a lot. This like all
Yep.
this jumping around, but and Elijah and Lydia, and they're
Yeah.
just with their wagon and
Yep.
they're killing walkers and they're yelling at Lydia because what if that walker had been one of the climbers? Is what they're
Yeah.
calling the fast one or the climby ones, which is kind of
Mhm.
really their main attribute at this point. They
Sure.
love climbing. Very much in the next episode, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, we should climb things.
Yeah.
Uh, and then out of the woods come Jules and Luke, who we haven't seen in. Well, Jules, I don't know that we ever saw. Like she might have had 2 seconds of screen time in the past, never
She
had
was
any
there, but
lines.
not really a lot.
And
So
but Luke, that actor disappeared. I don't know. It was early season 10, which feels like 8 seasons ago because of how long this season has been.
yeah, he went off to Oceanside because he had a love interest there, and that's how they
Like
got him off.
in the
You know.
middle of the Whisperer War, I feel like, or
Yeah, something like that. And it was like, okay, like, but now he's back, and there he is. So I have some pretty big feels about what's going to happen to him. Um, just it seems like odd that they brought him back at this moment. But basically confirms that Oceanside has also been taken over, much like Alexandria has. And I don't know why they all seem so surprised that the Commonwealth lied to them. It
well,
seems so weird to me, but
yeah, I mean, we have to remember that Aaron and Jerry and them are kind of in a time capsule because they left
true.
before things got real bad. But yeah, they were always a little bit sus about the Commonwealth anyway, so they're probably not super surprised. And Aaron is under the impression that everybody got out, which is also like a little bit. Oh, well, actually,
Right.
you might want to double check that.
Yeah.
Uh, and
So,
yeah, Luke and Jules are like, yeah, they're hunting us and they want to kill us. I'm like, why would the Commonwealth be hunting? But whatever. So they're like, okay, yeah, we gotta get out of here, which means they have to abandon their wagon full of supplies, which I guess is fine because what good is that going to do on the run? And there's no Oceanside to deliver it to, and
right.
they could just
Right.
maybe cache it and come back and find it later.
Yep.
Uh, so we then jump back to into the Commonwealth for the kangaroo court and
Right.
the
I have
courtroom
to
drama
say,
of the Walking Dead.
I have to tell you, I was very relieved that they kind of kept this particular piece short and sweet. I was worried it was going to take over way too much real estate basically in these last
Yeah,
episodes, but
it
they
wound
kept
up
it
just being two short scenes, right?
right. And it's what you would expect, which is that, it's very much the Eugene thing, and it's Milton acting as if her son wasn't a wanker, and
What
oh,
I
that
didn't expect was that they allowed the public to be in the courtroom
right,
and that the judge was so clearly biased.
right.
Like I've seen enough Law and Order to know that when a witness is saying he killed him,
Yep.
that's prejudicial or whatever. You can object to that, and when Yumiko does, She's like, no. She's like, okay, if anybody else here has ever seen Law and Order, which did predate the Walking Dead universe, so they should, some of them at least, should know what's
Right.
going on.
Well,
Uh,
this is a Walking Dead court, so I'm not totally surprised to see this.
yeah,
I was surprised that they let Yumiko actually say the things that she was saying, and they did keep trying to shut her up, but she got out the important parts. I do think that there was definitely there are very specific things, that Pamela Milton is trying to say, which is, oh, that wasn't my son on the tape, and oh, it was
yeah,
Eugene that did it, like very much trying to discredit Eugene and act as if but it's not exactly working, so that's good too.
yeah. It was
Um,
good to see the reaction shots from the extras. I thought that
right.
like they shot it, like they zoomed in on some people's faces going, what? Which was actually quite a relief. It's a little bit of this, Angela Kang talks about it at the end of the episode too. They're trying to say, oh, Milton thinks that she can say anything and they'll just take her word for it.
Right.
Strong, parallels to present day American politics.
Yeah, it was
And,
very heavy-handed and obvious that that's what they were going for. Yep.
and the fact that the people were calling the politicians out on their BS was also a little bit unrealistic.
Yeah. And then, I did like the part where, Yumiko does try to get um Mercer to testify against Milton. And it's like, okay, do you see how this court is running? And I did like how they kind of play this, which he's like, whether I do that or not, that's not going to help. And maybe it would have helped a little bit with the public,
Yeah.
but certainly they, they know where this is going. Like it's very clear where the verdict is going. So um, I was kind of like, I was suspicious, not suspicious, but I was like, oh, I have a feeling I know what they're going to do here, which they did, which
I
was
mean,
good.
think about how his storyline goes in these next two episodes.
Right.
He ends up arrested and having made zero public impact. If he had spoken up at the court at the
Maybe it
trial,
would have.
it
Maybe
would
it
I
would.
think it would have had a more of an impact, and it would have created more chaos inside the Commonwealth before the military emergency happens
So
later
it
on.
may have, it's just that she's got so much power with the military that I think he thought, you know, if I'm still in control of this, I can actually help people out. I kind of thought he was gonna sort of take out her spy, which is, that might have helped a little bit. But
It also
maybe
doesn't
he
help
would
that
have.
she has like a private military core
Right, right,
that we see in the next episode too.
right.
I don't know. I think it would have been helpful for him to speak up at the trial, because that would
Well,
have been a
I
chance for
just
him
think
to get on a soapbox and
I
and
think
persuade
she
a
would
lot more
have
people.
I think she would have silenced him really quickly if that
Yep,
had happened. So,
certainly could have. Hindsight being 2020, it would have
right,
just been more effective than whatever he did later on, which wasn't much, I would say.
right, right.
But yeah, it was worth a try for Yumiko to go to him, because and it's messed up that he's like, yeah, I know they took Princess away to a work camp, and I'll never see her again, and but Angela Kang makes it sound like he's already working on a plan that he's just not telling Yumiko about, but as that quote unquote plan unfolds,
It
there's
doesn't seem
nothing
like
there.
much of a plan.
No, he's recruited one dude.
Right.
And
And that
you
guy doesn't really have much of an effect, so that's not good.
he's okay. But
Fine.
it feels like he's also under arrest by the end.
Right.
Rose, nice guy, but an army of one is not enough for Mercer
Right.
to break this thing up.
Right. And then we also have our group of Carol, Daryl, uh Negan, not Negan, sorry, Maggie, etc.,
Etc.
doing doing their plot to get into Alexandria, and as expected, Connie, and as expected, they use the sewers.
But wasn't
Um,
that annoying in a way? Like Daryl's like, wait, we could use the sewers. I'm like,
I
of
know.
course.
Of course you're
That was
gonna
the
use
first
the sewers.
thing we thought of when.
Right, right, right. So I was actually laughing, but also laughing what he signs to Connie, which is like the stink pipe or something like stupid, the poop pipe or something is how what he signs to her. Um, and so, they have this whole plan to get down in there and it's they're sort of skulking around in there. And then but we in the meantime we also have the Negan tension with Warden come to a head. It was again surprising to me how much they actually let him see Annie. They have a moment where they see each other, and with Negan, it's to me it was surprising to me that the Warden didn't use her more as leverage, right?
Well,
Um,
that was him using her, right? He was rewarding or showing Negan
right,
that he could have time with her if he was a
right.
collaborator.
But even so, it was,
What was really odd about that first scene, that scene of him and the warden in his office, this was also after a scene with Zeke and Negan and Tyler Davis in the cafeteria where they're trying to recruit him. And he's like,
yeah,
no, everybody will be killed and the wrong people will die and you're on your own.
right,
And then Negan gets pulled into the office and he's like, I found this map on the floor after your fight with my guards, and somebody is a rat. Somebody is a traitor. I'm like, yeah, it's a POW camp. What do you expect, man? This is
right,
literally their only job other than digging is trying to
right,
figure out ways to escape.
right,
Shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. But then he calls out Trooper 197,
right,
this familiar trooper now, and says in front of Negan, by the way, Trooper 197, your request to be transferred has been denied. And Trooper 197 looks at Negan like, oh, sir, not in front of the prisoner. And it's
right.
like, but sir, my brother's very sick. I don't know if he's going to survive. And the warden completely, this is a huge strategic error. And I mean, they're setting this up for the final
Yeah, of
scene of this,
course.
whatever, but it's so short sighted. And like, maybe that's just, hey, you know what? Not everybody's a perfect bad guy. There are bad guys with huge flaws. And apparently this guy's huge flaw is he's a bad guy to everyone, not
Yeah,
just his enemies, but
right,
also to his own troops,
right.
by denying his transfer and extending his tour of duty. And we get to see 197's fist clench impotently. And Negan also
And
watched
Negan
that.
noticed it, so there you go. We
But
get
doing
it.
that in front of the prisoner makes zero sense.
No,
Like,
no, absolutely not. So yeah, so there's that. And I do think that this particular these scenes were very effective in just showing, and they again they're trying to get you to think that Negan's going to betray Ezekiel, and they had specifically have them have a pretty hard scene together before this. But in the end, it's really Negan that is, I don't want to say martyring himself, but puts himself up as the ringleader.
totally martyring himself.
And but even the warden is like, it's too stupid to understand that that's really what's happening, and then decides to take out his pregnant wife too in front of all the prisoners, like that's going to help. And then it
This
was a
guy, he
pretty,
just out evils him. He over evils.
yeah, and it's like, okay, like nobody is going to feel like there's any hope of anything here, so they're going to just take you out, my friend. And that's kind of what happens, is that it's not just the group of people that we see that stand in front of Negan and Annie, to guard them. It's other people in the camp, including Tyler. And so that, and it's pretty much half the camp. um
It's like 20 or 30 people. It's a nice I am Spartacus kind of moment
yeah,
led by Ezekiel. I
yeah,
appreciated it.
yeah.
And it's like everybody on our cast. And also like when you're putting Negan down in this firing line, and we know that he has Dead City coming up next year,
Hmm.
it's a little hard to take this scene seriously. But then they flipped it pretty quickly by bringing Annie out there. So I kind of appreciated that. I was like,
Yeah, and
okay,
I
is this
actually,
when
I
she's gonna
actually,
die?
and I actually thought she was going to die, in this particular moment, and they didn't do that yet. But I think obviously that must be coming, right?
So now are we thinking childbirth, or
Maybe, I don't know,
maybe
but
they just have a divorce?
I don't think so. But we'll see you got to have something that's going to spur me Negan on. But in any case, um, there's
Maybe it'll be the Negan, Maggie, in parentheses, and Annie show
right,
next year.
right,
What
and
I
so,
thought was a little bit goofy about this whole sequence is that Daryl and Connie are in one poop tunnel.
mhm,
Maggie and Carol are in a different one. They kind of all come up in different places. I did like the scene between Connie and Daryl in the tunnel where he's killing zombies and he's kind of breathing hard, and she
mhm.
signs to him like it's okay to be scared, and he just kind of nods and like it's like a great moment. I don't know how these two do it, but that was a really nice moment between those two
Yeah, they
actors.
do. They do well together. They definitely have some chemistry.
And also acknowledging that Daryl, our superhero character, has emotions because he's trying to get to the kids. Like he
Yep.
is like that's a good thing to do, and it's good to take a beat to do to have that interaction while they're having to show them traversing this tunnel network. Even though
Yep.
this is a massive sewer, this is like the sewer for the Burj Khalifa or something. It's a huge tunnel that they can stand upright in.
Yeah, and they come up just in time to help supplement the
They do.
Ezekiel thing.
But
And
where Carol and Maggie come up is like under one of the brownstones, and I was just convinced that they were so screwed in this scene, or in these couple of scenes where they come up and then they get busted by a guard almost right away and have to like knock them out,
yeah,
and then
that
they're
was
just
kind
stuck
of
in a
crazy.
closet, and you're just like, oh god, you guys are
Um,
messed up.
and then they finally discover, like they discover little Herschel being interrogated. Like, what is this dude doing with
What
the
is
kid?
even going on in that room?
It's a
And the
little
guy isn't
upsetting.
interrogating him. He's just going, stop talking. Golly, you talk
I
so
know.
much. And
It's
he gets
so
shot in the
weird.
face. He gets shot in the face for yelling at Herschel. All he's really doing is the kind of thing that a bad babysitter might do is like, oh, you're complaining constantly. Could you please stop?
Right. And part
Maggie
of
just
me was
shoots him
like,
in the face.
well, and so part of me thought that they were screwed because I was like, could they be holding Herschel hostage because they know she's coming for him? Like, this seems like a very odd thing to be doing with a kid when all the other kids are somewhere else. Like, it just felt very odd that
And where is Judith in this scenario? She shows up
right,
in the next episode.
right, but we don't know where she is now, and that was just weird that Herschel's all alone, tied to a chair in this room with this weird guy yelling at him.
But yeah,
Um,
that was a very confusing and puzzling scene, and I don't like the way that that was put
no,
together.
no. But anyway, eventually they're all, together and making their plans.
And
Which,
Rosita runs in and is like, Coco's not here? I've checked every other house. I'm like,
yeah,
how did you possibly check every other house in Alexandria?
we haven't even found Judith yet. Where? How would you know? Like,
Uh,
um,
yeah, and I mean the end of this scene is yeah, at the end of the scene, Rosita feeds the warden's face to one of his dead guards, which I thought was pretty intense. And it was also just kind of in the back of my head because there's a little bit of a rebellion amongst the guards.
mhm,
One of them gets shot. The rest of them seem to be like, yeah, we're not going to do this.
yep,
But they still have their weapons,
right.
and they just watch Rosita feed their boss to a zombie.
Well, he
It just
wasn't well liked, so I'm not totally shocked
it
about
just
this
all
part.
feels a little crazy.
It does feel a little crazy, but that's I guess where we're at in this particular. They don't get they don't they're not having any cares in the world. I think that they also, and probably much like the other guards, some of them have their reasons. I don't think he was a likable dude.
Yeah, and they all want to probably their reasons are probably they want to get home to their families.
Yeah,
They don't want to be terrible people. And
right.
so then when the next episode begins, and that's actually we have to still go back and talk about the Eugene stuff.
Hmm.
They're all arrested,
Right.
and the rebels have taken over. So I'm just pointing out that there's like a weird transition here
There is.
that doesn't get shown or explained. And suddenly, Trooper 197, whose motivation for going against the warden was to get home to his sick brother, is probably in that lineup with zip ties on with the rest of those soldiers and unable
Yep.
to get to his brother still.
Yep.
I don't know.
Um,
Just seemed like
and
kind of a bad deal for 197.
right. And then we also have the trial has continued. It's definitely stacked. I think Eugene sees which way the wind is blowing, and he does do a pretty good like, and he tells Max that she just needs to let him get killed because he kind of sees that's how it's going and that this is where it led him. And he does like a pretty, like, rousing speech at the end about doing right, about not sitting by and watching when things are wrong are happening. Definitely talking about his experience with the saviors and other
Definitely
people.
talking directly to Mercer.
Yep.
Like only
And
one person can make a difference, and you don't have to
right,
give up your what's right to be
right,
safe.
right. And but also talking to the crowd. Like, I think he's definitely trying to rouse up, get some support, even if he is not saved. I think he is trying to sort of help with that particular cause. And so, it wasn't shocking to me that when he gets sort of let off for his quote unquote execution, that Mercer instead lets him go. Though I have to say, his whole plan about Eugene being like, you know, now he's, totally on board with his cause and all of that stuff is just such a like huge switch. um it feels like it's very full of holes a little bit. Like, where are you going to put him, and how are you going to hide this from Pamela Milton, given that this was such a public thing? But so I have some questions about that. I don't know, did you, it felt very like, I mean, I know Mercer has a lot of power, but as you said, it seems like he's only convinced one person
Well,
over to
there's
his
there are
side.
there are four guards in the hallway with them, right? So there's four of them, maybe.
Okay,
We don't get to
fine.
see any of their faces though. But yeah, like all he does is he has no plan, but
Hmm.
he's been holding off for this moment because, or maybe it's just that he's holding off to save Eugene because that's Max's boyfriend and this is the
Maybe.
only thing he can do. But also, did you see the Angela Kang bit at the end where she said that this was ad libbed, his line at the end,
Oh, I didn't, but that doesn't
which
shock
is
me.
pretty funny, and it's I don't know if it's podcast safe to say, but he just kind of says it's time to f things up or let's go f things up or something along
Yeah,
those lines with a little sneer, his little characteristic Michael James
yeah.
Shaw sneer on his face. It's a funny line though, and I laughed out loud when he
Oh yeah, I
utters
liked
it.
it. It was great.
But then like he has nothing to back that statement up with. It's not
Yeah,
like he's gonna throw everybody a gun and they're gonna run out into the streets and start their
or like
rebellion.
he had organized people that he knew was on his side. You know what I mean? Like, which is what I was like, oh, maybe he's got a whole little like back channel to this whole group of people that are on his side. And then no, that's not what
This
happened.
dude has never led a coup before. Like in the next episode, Vickers is still like wandering around in his headquarters. He's still like answering. He's still having conversations and going through the motions of doing his job. Like he has not actually.
Right,
Yeah, he's still trying to figure it out, which is kind of a bummer because he's had a lot of time, in
right.
theory, to put something together.
Yeah, so there's that. We should also talk about our little Aaron, Lydia, Elijah team. That they definitely go full on Whisperer to join in with the herd. So we should point that out.
Not full whisper. They don't make masks. They just
They
do
don't make masks,
guts.
but they do the guts and they do the whispering. So we get to see that. And that's kind of like and we already see like they're hinting that there's one of the climbers in there because he
They
picks up
pick
a
up a
knife.
knife. Yeah, that's wild. They did not follow through with that in either of these two episodes. But yeah, they get kind of corralled up by some Commonwealth soldiers too, and during this episode, like in jeeps. And
Yeah,
I
and I
was
think it's pretty clear that Pamela is doing what she tried to do before, which is
yeah,
like you're trying to control people and disperse the crowd by making them afraid of the Walker hordes. So you clear the streets and you maintain power that way.
and this is within like a week of the last time that they did this too. So
Yep. So
it
it's
also
it's
shows a little bit of lack of forethought or like good strategic thinking on her part that she only has one tool.
right. So yeah, and I think that's about where we are left here, with the sort of plans to go to the Commonwealth, which, I think then we probably have to jump into it, right?
Yeah, so in Family, we actually hear it's not until I think the beginning of Family, which by the way, let's quickly talk about Faith, which we just watched, was written by Nicole Mirante Matthews and Magali Lozano and directed by Rose Troche or Trochet. Family was written by Magali Lozano, Eric Mountain, and Kevin Diebold, and directed by Sharat Raju.
Yeah.
So some writing continuity here, and a lot of the more familiar names of this latter part of the Walking Dead series writers room. And they kind of start. Well, the start is that montage again. It's Judith's voice. They're all taking mostly recognizable weapons out of a big weapons
Kyle.
box, and then showing a clip of like how that weapon was used,
Right.
uh, including Rosita's super cool toothed sword, a massive double-headed battle axe of Jerry's, just a regular machete that Gabriel apparently used with some abandon,
Mm-hmm.
and then finally the Colt Python and the little it's a baby katana. Was I don't know how you say that. I think it's a waza sushi or something along those lines.
Well, there's also they show the staff. They show Lydia with the staff and
In
like
Lydia's staff, and
yeah.
the slingshots. Yeah, it's a bunch of weapons. Uh, and suddenly, as Judith is just freaking there.
Yep.
She just like walks out and
Appeared
is
out of
talking to
nowhere.
people. Like, yeah, this isn't what my brother would have wanted. It's not what my dad was looking for. Like, where have you been? You've been, I mean, granted, you were taken, but there was nothing to show like what she's been going through since they
No.
were separated. And maybe there was no way to do that.
Not any of the kids, just, Herschel in that room.
Herschel in that room and Judith and RJ's there.
Yeah, suddenly.
And Coco is missing because maybe she was too young to be running around
Right.
Alexandria.
And
I don't
then they
know.
have and then they have, Tyler basically helpfully say, "Oh, sometimes with the little kids who don't have parents, they put them in these homes in the wards or something like that," which it's like, "Okay, I guess you're there to share this information because you
That's his last little bit of exposition that Tyler
get
Davis gets to do.
yeah,
Uh, Maybe there's one more, but yeah. And so then they just make this plan that they're all going to go back to the Commonwealth, or not all of them, but enough of them. And by the way, we didn't mention in the last episode, one of the people who stood up in front of Negan was, in fact, Nabila.
yep.
Her first appearance.
No, no, no. She was in the little work train. She was behind one of the little things, so she was in there.
So she was in the last episode, but that
Yep.
was the first time she's shown up
Oh, in a
in how
while.
many
Yeah,
episodes of this
that's
show.
true. That's true.
She at least exists. She was mentioned a few episodes ago. Now she's back, and she's still standing up for what's right and doing the right thing. And she is left in the care, or RJ is left in her care as this team of rebels, scrappy rebels, decides to head back into the Commonwealth on the train to
Right.
find the
And
children.
and Judith talks her way into joining as long as, she stays close to Daryl. So, I don't know that this is the best idea, but and as we see, maybe not. But
Yeah,
that's
and
what
she
that's
also bequeaths Rick's hat to RJ before she leaves,
mhm.
which might also be some foreshadowing.
Well,
Um,
and then there's a scene between her and Daryl where he's like, "I'm just gonna when we get out of this, I'm gonna tell you all the stories about people that love you." I'm like, "Oh, you're gonna wait? That is a bad idea. Bad
Only after
idea,
we get out of
Daryl."
this.
Yes, bad idea, Daryl. Um. So yeah, so we got that some Judith vibe and some bad action here, I'd say. And then we've got them on the train. We've got some interactions between Tyler and Connie and Kelly basically saying he feels bad that he hurt people and that there were reasons, and they're like, "Oh, you can make up for it by what you do now." And there's a lot of focus on those kinds of things, both in Negan's storyline and things that Gabriel had said before, which is that, your actions now mean a lot, your actions at the end mean a lot, and there's always redemption, I think, is the idea. Um, and so, and Negan being the biggest example of that, I would say, given how atrocious his misdeeds were.
I would
Um,
also like to take just a moment here to talk about Daryl's facial scar.
yeah.
There's a few scenes in this episode and the last one around this time of the episode where there's a close up of it. And I got to say, it's not great.
No.
It's this is a scar that showed up during the time jump of season 10. Actually in the post-season episodes that we got like tacked on to the end of season 10.
Mm,
It was during the Leah discovery episode
hmm.
where suddenly he has a facial scar after a time jump. And this thing has been on his face ever since. And it does not stand up well to close-ups. It's just got very red and wide, and it kind of just looks prosthetic to me.
Well, and it's not consistent. Like it always looks a little different, not in a good way. So I'm not sure what's up with that scar, but yeah.
And you never even, what's kind of crazy is that we never even know how he got it. Like,
Oh
and they've made
no.
it such a part of his face that to if it was at least Beta had given it to him, or that crazy lady with the kid army, something memorable, but they're just like, you know what, Norman Reedus needs to have a scar on his face, and so
Yeah.
we're gonna do this, and it's never gonna get less big and red. It's just gonna
Mhm.
stay like a bunch of like it's like a mustard line or something on his face half the time.
Maybe they didn't expect him to have like so many close-ups, but it does look very prosthetic-y.
Yeah, yeah, I guess that's it. It does look prosthetic-y, and it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But I've been looking at it for enough episodes now that I finally wanted to at least give it a mention. We've got yet another angry mob in the streets in front of Pamela Milton's
Mhm.
office. She's ticked off, and well, mostly she's ticked off at Mercer, who's standing there next to Vickers, who is the evil version of him, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, Mercer, you're not actually playing your hand very smoothly here. Maybe he's just not like a strategic thinker, because when
Yeah,
he's just
I
like,
don't
yeah, I
know.
don't know, he must have gotten out with some help, and maybe it's all those people who've been getting disappeared,
Yeah, like
Governor.
why would you say that? Like you're now tipping her off and like, it's just not yeah,
This is why he didn't want to like join the rebels, because he's actually like really not that good under pressure. he'll just start he'll just start showing her that he is working actively against her through some snide comments, and then get arrested, and after having accomplished very little. Like, it's just dumb, right? It's like
and
it's a
also
very
playing his hand by taking away guards from like the very tunnel that he has told them to come through the rebellion anyway.
yeah,
And
why not just put his own trusted guards
right,
there?
that would probably make a lot more sense. But yeah, so there Mercer's not playing this so well. Princess and Mercer also have a very like, suspicious conversation with what's her face, the Pamela Milton sort of personal crony. He's like, "Can I have the room?" And it's like clear, like I thought she was gonna overhear the whole thing or something like that, which she didn't, but it was enough to tip her off. And again, he could have played this a little bit better, and I feel like he is smarter than that. So I'm not loving how they're writing this, quite honestly. But their whole plan for them to sneak in is quickly uncovered, or at least discovered, with Pamela Milton sort of setting up to take them out.
She's just a
Um,
damn micromanager. That's how they figure it out.
right, right. And
I
there's
thought
like
this was actually decent writing too, because she says to Vickers on the radio, like, no, it's fine. I'm sure he has a good reason for why he did that.
yep,
But clearly, like, then one or two scenes later, Vickers is there with the Gestapo to arrest him, and so like they've had another conversation, but they don't show it to us. I sometimes I do appreciate that sort of like trickery that they do with the script.
right. So anyway, we have, and as our little rebellion is sort of working their way to the Commonwealth, we have another Negan and Ezekiel scene where they semi make peace with each other, but it is a very good speech with Negan acknowledging all that he has done and that he knows he can't be forgiven.
Yeah, I like this
I liked
dialogue
it.
between them. Like Zeke
Yep.
does a redux of "and yet I smile," which I thought
Hmm.
was good, even though he wasn't smiling for most of it, which is actually appropriate because
Yep.
that
Right,
speech
right.
preceded a whole bunch of bad things.
Hmm.
But then Negan fires back with the "you guys are just better than me, man." Like he's there's some tingly stuff over there, and that was in the
Yeah, it's
train car.
pretty
That was
good.
good. That was good.
And you have Maggie overhearing this,
Yeah,
which is
and
good.
she looks thoughtful. What is
Hmm.
that? What is she thinking? I don't know. But she had also just kind of not yelled at Negan, but he was like, "Hey, we need to go and kill Milton." And she's like, "There is no we." I'm
Right.
like, "There is. You're gonna be on a TV show together.
Yep.
You're gonna have to get
You
past
have to get
this."
it together. You have to get it together, you two. And so we have, but they're all like the gang is on the move. We also have our other group with the herd, Aaron, Lydia, and Jerry, and Luke and Jules. And they realize that the herd is a lot bigger. They can't really get out until they see this RV, which I also thought was a little weird of a choice, just because it's kind of like without drawing the attention of the walkers, or like, they kind of are. Lydia knows better than anybody that they kind of like focus in on things that don't move with them. And so to try to get into this thing, I thought was kind of odd.
Why couldn't they
Um,
just kind of gradually work their way toward the edge and then
right.
peel
This
off?
felt weird that they would trap themselves into an RV. And then this whole scene made me really annoyed. I don't know how you felt about it, but it made me very, very annoyed.
It was funny
Um,
how Jules kind of like I just thought it was funny. It was like in slow motion how people kind of got like carried off by the
By
herd.
the herd. And it was like, you guys have done this before. This is not
Well, they might not
like,
have done this exact sort of maneuver before.
I know, but I don't know. It just felt like very strange. Very strange that this particular group, especially Lydia, would be, this would happen. But, the upshot of all of this is that Jules and Lucas and Elijah are separated from Aaron and Lydia and Jerry. And in the process, Lydia's arm gets bitten. And of course, with Aaron, who has had this happen before, they got to take it off. And that was pretty rough for Lydia.
I thought this was another great scene,
Yep.
mostly because of Ross Marquand
Yep.
and his that "you are so loved, Lydia" had me just about wanting to cry. I was just
I
like,
know.
"Oh, dude,
I
Aaron,
know.
how are you going to do that?" And like honestly, if you're going to be trapped in a camper with your freshly bit forearm with two guys, it couldn't be better than Jerry and Aaron, right?
Oh, I
Like
know.
those are the
And
guys you
also,
want to be trapped with, where they have to cut off your arm and be nice to you.
well, and also the fact that, Aaron had been through this. He really had been. And so that moment between them, this was a pretty rough scene to watch. And it was good between them. And then, Jerry does his Jerry thing and is going to be the hero and go and find Elijah because
That
he's
was
like,
crazy. Why would he do
oh,
that?
I
They
know. I'm
better
like,
not kill Jerry.
if
I
they
will
kill
riot.
Jerry, I'm like, this is not somebody I'm like, I can take a lot of losses, but if they take Jerry, I will be just
He
devastated.
has to set up Kingdom 2.0.
He does.
Yeah, that will be very difficult to manage. Like Angela Kang talks about Lydia being, or Cassidy McClincy, who plays her, just being able to tap into Lydia's pain spectrum. And
Mhm.
I think she explains away her kind of counterintuitive holding on to Elijah and basically making noises that attract the zombie to her to bite her in the first place and kind of
Yeah,
tipping everything into a worse place. And she just explains it all the way through, like the trauma that she's gone through. When you put it, well, Angela Kang's very good at putting
she's
things,
good at
framing
trying
these
to.
things.
Yeah, 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 but still, I
It
don't.
is still a frustrating, like ultimate scenario that they end in, but you can explain this away by saying Lydia is like one of the most traumatized people on this cast.
Which is true.
And when something like this happens, where she's getting stripped away from someone she loves, and she has had such a bad run of luck,
Hmm.
I get it. It's not great, but it makes sense. And so now we'll see. Will she survive? She's down a hand,
She is
and
down hand,
her
but
boyfriend is in the wind, and Jerry's out looking for him.
yeah. But I did like Jerry's little hero moment. Both in he's the one taking care of business, and then he puts on his little gut hood and like sneaks out, and that was pretty well done. So
Yep. If I was him, I might have freshened up my guts because they did have a walker in there with them that they
yeah,
killed. But they don't have to show everything. So he
yeah,
goes back up. Hopefully, we don't have a scene where Luke and Jules and Elijah and Jerry now all get mowed down by machine guns. Or actually, no,
yeah.
they Luke and Jules show up in this episode in the city at the very end, right? They like run out of the crowd of zombies to meet up with their old buddies.
They do.
But
And
no Elijah, no Jerry.
nope. And then the other part of this is that we've got our group is coming into the station, and again they're not taking an enormous amount of care, but fine. Pamela has it all figured out. She's got her own little like group of security guys. And they come into the station and Daryl's like, "Oh, something's wrong." But again, they're like in full view and they don't have the high ground. And I just don't, again, this is one of those things where I think this is why this scene and the RV stuff bothered me so much, is that these are very seasoned um warriors basically.
Yeah.
And but Daryl is especially seasoned in this kind of thing and has this experience. And so I found this hard to believe that they would come in and out into the open so easily, without, I just think they would be a little bit more cautious, especially because he has Judith with him. But instead they get mowed down by or a lot of them, Tyler especially gets killed.
Yeah, in the
um
first burst
yep. And then Judith is shot, and
by Pamela
yep,
Milton.
and then
It's a
suddenly
little far fetched
it
that she's
is.
gonna pick up a gun and start shooting at people. I mean, we've seen her hunt, but and then they do this whole like, oh, everything stops so that Pamela Milton can look appalled by what she has done. I don't think she would give a damn.
I don't think she would either, but there they have it. And
Also,
I
as
guess,
soon as Judith is shot, like the Alexandrians all have like a scene of them shooting back, and they all are now suddenly hitting. It
yep,
was like, oh, now that one of ours has been hit, now we will shoot much more accurately, and we will take, we will be better at fighting them off. It
right,
almost looked like they were about to win, but they're
yeah,
still talking about running away, and so I was kind of frustrated that I felt like they could have just finished the job, but
right.
they have to minister to Judith, who has been shot in the shoulder, maybe just below the shoulder. Either way, it doesn't look good. Could be the
Nope.
lung.
It could be. It's hard to tell. They aren't showing too much. But then they, get themselves some smoke bomb from the fire extinguisher, and they have Daryl shoot it, and they get out. And while they are doing that, the horde is coming through because there's some climbers, and just a bunch of little mishaps. The climbers managed to open the whole doors to the Commonwealth, and so
Well, yeah,
um,
before that, they managed to, there was a climber who did a hop on to one of
yeah,
the Commonwealth Jeeps.
yep,
This was Mercer's whole like strategy for, I don't know what, leading the herd away, maybe. But
yeah,
they get this hop on, which is, very Arrested Development, um, which manages to overturn quite literally the entire strategy. Like there were multiple vehicles out there, but one zombie hopping onto one of them apparently like managed to make them all crash.
yep.
Um, and then Mercer's like, okay, that's it. Everybody fall back. It's
Yep.
just a little ludicrous, but they are dealing with a new threat, which is climbing zombies. And then
Yeah,
when they
and
start climbing up the gate towers later, I thought that was, I mean, it's cool. It's just there's a lot of them too, right? There were like four or five climbing
yeah, and
zombies in
now
the
there's
scene.
suddenly more of them. And also Mercer, because he was arrested, gets taken out, so he can't even help with the defense. And Pamela Milton does, and I think we'll see this again, bite her in the ass, ha ha ha. But she says to her now right hand person, that woman that was basically betrayed Mercer, um, oh well, we have to protect the estates. We're going to leave all the people in the wards to die. And the woman is like, everybody will be vulnerable. And she's like, yeah, we don't do that. We're not here to save them. And I mean, I think we can see where that's going to go. And I
It's
think
she's
we're,
doing the same thing the warden did.
yep,
Like she's over eviling.
yep. And it's
You
definitely a
can't.
callback. It's definitely a callback to that. And so I think we will see a big switch. And my bet is that this woman releases Mercer or gets him out of there. So, um, and then we've just
Hmm.
got and then I think the last piece of this is that we see our group of rebels in the Commonwealth getting they're being sort of cordoned off to be bait for the walkers.
I thought these scenes didn't work for
It
me.
didn't they didn't work because there's too many walkers, there's too big of a horde, this wouldn't contain them. And
Why are the CW guys completely ignoring an armed group of people
right,
running around in their city too?
right,
I mean, there's no gunfire. Like maybe that just makes sense, but and then they also just get like hemmed in instead. If you're really blocking off the estates, why are they all downtown? I don't know. Like it's just it feels a little too convenient, and it also feels a little bit like too much TV set where they're just running down these alleys. And then by the end, only Daryl and Judith managed to make it down this one alley that they're all trying to get to. Uh, Really kind of questioning what's going to happen to these other people because they were surrounded. They also all get to see a zombie climb up over an obstacle, and we have a
right.
nice reaction shot from Negan, who's like, what the heck?"
Yep, yep.
Which was
Um
fun because
so
now they've all
there's
seen it.
right. And we've got, and there was also a moment between Daryl and Judith with, the daddy thing where she's kind of coming in and out of consciousness.
Yeah,
And to be fair, he does look a little like Rick. Uh, he's very
Uh,
dirty and beardy, and
he's got
gives
all
these
that hair
moments.
though.
I
But
know,
yeah.
but yeah. And so that pulls at the heartstrings. So that is pretty much it. It feels pretty dark, so I guess we're gonna have to see some measure of heroics, see some turning of this, which I think we will. I think we're gonna see, the Pamela's. What is the woman's name? I feel terrible.
Vickers?
It's Vickers, right?
Yeah, Vickers is the new
the new
Mercer.
the new Mercer. So we see Vickers. I think we're going to see Vickers turn this and join the rebellion, and probably a good number of the Commonwealth soldiers when they realize what's happening, because that is the sort of crazy misstep here, is that all of their families are in the wards and things like that. So
Right.
this is not like and if you're expecting this group to protect you, they're not going to do that and let their people die. So anyway, we shall see more of this. You know, I I am looking forward to watching it and talking about it with you. But any other predictions? I mean, I think we have to see somebody from this cast, go.
Yeah, that's a
Sure.
good question. Like who is it going to be uh
It feels like maybe Gabriel and Rosita, because of the focus they have
on
on
Coco?
them. On them and Coco. So maybe
Hmm.
that happens. Also feels like maybe Judith, but maybe that's just like a psych kind of thing. But it does feel like that's how at least they're prepping that up to
I mean,
be.
if she's the analog for Carl, he's the only one who lives at the end of the
Right.
comics,
So
right?
maybe.
Maybe.
And then we've also got, the Negan Annie thing. So I feel like Annie has to die for Negan to be free to go uh with Maggie. I just don't see him leaving her for any reason to do anything. So I think she and the baby probably have to die, or maybe you're right, she dies in childbirth.
Yeah.
So
I
we'll
reckon
see.
Ezekiel will end up running the Commonwealth, so he's probably going to live
Yeah.
because of all of his adverse situations that he's overcome.
Yep.
Princess and Mercer, question marks. They could both
Yep.
go, or they could be like a fairy tale
Could be.
love story success.
And
We'll
Max
see.
and Eugene, I don't know, tough to say, but Eugene's also been giving a lot of these speeches and yet still surviving. So maybe it's his time.
Now he put on like a little short black cloak. And he
Yep.
also beat up a soldier and maybe murdered him for no good reason in this episode in order to get out of being like
Caught.
hidden.
Yeah, so that's again, like I'm like, why hide him in an apartment? Put him underground or something. Like it just felt weird that that's where they hid him, but
Yeah. I
maybe
also
they
kind
couldn't.
of thought from earlier in this season that the homes and the apartments in the Commonwealth were reinforced. Like
Right,
Princess's front door in her apartment building was like metal,
right.
like a heavy duty door. So if the people of the Commonwealth just went into their homes, they should be safe from the zombies. But I guess that's not how they all are. Certainly, the door that he was hiding behind was just a normal door.
Hmm.
So maybe the it would just not work. But I feel like if they had gotten everybody from the Commonwealth to go inside, even the ones in the wards where the zombies are all going to be, should be okay for a few days.
Yeah. Um,
Well, we'll see. It's probably not going to go that way.
yeah, and I think we have to see a little bit more, like some kind of standoff with Pamela, obviously. And then there was, there's going to be some kind of I feel like Tommy is probably gonna be working on Judith. That is my guess.
Yeah, yeah,
And we did have a bit of a reunion between Magna and
and Luke.
and Yumiko.
Oh, and Yumiko. Yeah,
Um, and so that, well, they didn't do much with it, but it is the gang's all back together, at least for the moment.
yeah,
So we'll see. But definitely looking forward to talking about this with you more. I'm curious to hear what other people think. I know some are probably well ahead of us, but we're taking it easy on this this wrap up.
yeah.
Um,
But we'll be wrapping it up completely the next time we talk about it. So that'll
yep.
I'm looking forward to it. As much as I'm like avoiding watching the last episode of Andor because I don't want it to be over. This one I think we need to put to bed. It's been harder and harder to avoid
I know we
spoilers
got
too.
to do it. We got to do it. So next time we will be wrapping this up, sadly saying goodbye to our OG cast and series. So
Yeah. So if you want to get with us, we are on Twitter at Reanimated PCast. You can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. All of our podcast episodes are available online at reanimated.podbean.com. And you can also send us messenger pigeon to California or New York. They'll always get here, right? Isn't that
yep,
how that works?
that's how it works. And until next time, ciao.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.